Hey guys, we are back to talk about The Artist's Way, week 8. This week was a substantially better week in terms of being in tune with the course and also just in tune with my creativity in many different ways. We'll get into it. So, this past week was talking about recovering a sense of strength, and I'll read the description again per usual. This week tackles another major creative block, time. You will explore the ways in which you have used your perception of time to preclude taking creative risks. You will identify immediate and practical changes you can make in your current life. You will excavate the early conditioning that may have encouraged you to settle for far less than you desire creatively. So before I get into this, I'll talk more about how this week has gone in general. I think this week has been kind of a lot of me just enjoying watching movies. I've watched at least like one movie per day after work, and it was a lot of rest time. I also got my period this week, so I was just really like low energy in that sense, but I felt very invigorated creatively in consuming the content that I really love, which is film. And like, film is really a medium that I have loved to consume my whole life. And I haven't technically yet written a short or a screenplay that I've wanted to be developed, but that's kind of like a recurring thing I always go back to. So I think that's just fun to like talk about. And then it was just really fun watching both old and new movies. Old movies meaning movies I've watched before in the past, and watching new movies as well, which I can also talk about a little bit soon. But let's go through the different sections in this chapter, if I can find it. Okay, so the first part talks about artistic survival. So this section was really focused on kind of moving on to the next thing and like learning to bear your losses, because as artists we kind of have a lot of abandoned things that we kind of move on from when we find that it's not working anymore, which I definitely resonate with. I have so many unfinished works from the past like 10 years, just me writing my own stuff and not finishing them. And I think that's like the bane of my existence overall, creatively. And like, yeah, that's just something I'm always grappling with. So it's like talking about how it's very important to learn to sit in the hurt and like really acknowledge your grief in moving on from a piece if it doesn't work out, so you can fully move on to the next thing. Because I think we're always growing and evolving as artists. And in previous weeks we've talked about how sometimes something has to finish, but it's not really like finished, or you're always thinking of how to improve it, but you have to actually do the work and execute the work before you can fully move on. Even when it's done, it's not fully done, but you kind of have to accept that it's done, if that makes sense. So that's always something that you're working on. So then the next section, next section kind of talks about intellectualism and art, which is always kind of like this, like in comparison, and always like there's a tension in between them, because you think about like academics, that this is how Julia talks about it in the book. There's always academics and creative artists, and if you're one and the same, both things are kind of not in correlation with each other. Because let's see, in the book, the entire thrust of intellectualism runs counter to the creative impulse. That's what she says. Artists and intellectuals are not the same animal. And going into, if you want to create something, especially if you're like younger, Julia also says young artists may channel their gifts into commercial endeavors and then forget their dreams of doing more groundbreaking and risky work. They may work as editors instead of writers, film editors instead of film directors, commercial artists instead of fine artists, and get stuck within shouting distance of their dreams. Ouch, that's what I wrote. I was like, ooh, that's kind of tea because low key, that's what I wanted to do going out of college. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can just be like an editor instead of writing my own stuff so I can be like adjacent to the work that other people are doing, but I don't produce my own work. So I think sometimes it's like as a means of survival, talking about the first part of this chapter, it's like sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, but there's always balance. It's very important to go back to that specific work that you're doing as well, your own creative pursuits, and not forget your dreams, which is easier said than done. But I thought that was a good insight. Um, and yeah, Julia continues to say, in order to recover our sense of hope and the courage to create, we must acknowledge and mourn the scars that are blocking us. So that's tea. Also, I believe in that too. Yeah, sometimes, just our fear and our own low self-worth and just other agendas gets in the way of us actually doing the work. But again, overcoming those struggles and hurdles comes from within and like accepting all parts of that. So I also thought that was a really cool insight. And yeah, she continues to go on into the next section, gain disguised as loss. So it's kind of like that age old saying that every loss is a lesson learned, or every experience is a learning opportunity to grow and move on and become better in whatever you do, whatever craft you have. So, yeah, Julia goes into some anecdotes from her own life about like kind of writing for other people and then at some point making the leap to go to film school when she's like 35, and then she writes her own stuff and then she's able to get to that point just a little bit later in life. So yeah, sometimes everybody's on their own journey, or all the time everybody's on their own journey, everybody's on their own timeline. Good things take time. So that's a very good reminder reading through this as I am growing in my own adulthood, and my 20s as a tumultuous time. It's a long time, and there's so many years ahead of me. I hope and pray to pursue what I really want to do and figure that out as I go along. Um, so yeah, it's like everything that you like want to work towards, it doesn't always have to be a moving target. Um, when I say that, it's like it doesn't have to feel like it's so far out of reach, or when you're so close, it like gets away, which it can feel like that sometimes too. But I also think like when you're moving towards what you want, it's one day at a time, one page at a time, 1 week, 1 month. It may feel like a long time, but you get there eventually where you need to be at the right moment. I also wrote, this was fun. There was I think it's a Latin phrase, non illegitimi de te carborundum. So sorry, I butchered that. But the rough translation, very important for artists, is don't let the bastards get you down. And I was like, I should get this tattooed, like the Latin phrase. Like, Loki, okay. Then I also wrote, after reading, when faced with a loss, immediately take one small action to support your artist. Your action says, I acknowledge you and your pain. I promise you a future worth having. Then I wrote, treating myself is a practice, especially after a loss. So, for example, let's see, maybe I'll talk about publishing, because I thought I would get into publishing as a career, but then I didn't. So I was very close to getting this job and like possibly moving to New York. And then I went through some interviews and they're like, we're going with someone else. So then I was like, oh, right, okay. So I think that was like my third time applying to something and like getting kind of close, but not really. or that was like my first time. But then I felt like going through those steps, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is not where I need to be right now. And then I pivoted and I'm in a new field and I'm learning a lot. So that's cool. And again, every experience leads you to somewhere else where you need to be at the perfect moment in time. So I think I'm always learning that, and it's so cool. And then, yeah, actually, this next part, Julia goes into her anecdotes, age and time, product and process. So it's like everything that happens for a reason, and you're on your own timeline, like I said, and not to be too redundant. Um, I highlighted some really good quotes here. Creativity occurs in the moment, and in the moment, we are timeless. Kind of like kids, they're not like self conscious, so they kind of just do everything in their own flow. So, in tandem, when we're in the flow of our own creativity, we're not self conscious and we're just letting the flow go through us, which I think is super cool. And then really like differentiating between your soul versus your ego. It's like it's kind of like the active versus passive verb. So like I am writing a screenplay is more interesting because you're in like the constant passive motion of writing it rather than I have written a screenplay, which is like I've already done it and that like pleases your ego. So it's really the balance between um nurturing your soul and versus nurturing your ego. Just because there's no like tangible product doesn't mean it's not something that can't be celebrated. So it's like if you're in the process of it, it's a celebration in itself, which is cool too. Then again, what I've said before, in a sense, no creative act is ever finished. But it doesn't mean that the work that you've done is worthless. Rather, it's a way to point the work to somewhere new and better work to be done, which I really like hearing as well. And then, yeah, the best part is just you have to do it. Like, you have to do the thing. And even if you don't get like money or tangible outcomes, published works, stuff like that, you have to work up to it, you know? And even when you get that, it's not the end all be all. Like, I don't want my magnum opus to be like my first ever book or my first ever screenplay. There's always something better to be reach for. And even when you reach your best point, like say Christopher Nolan with Oppenheimer, like or like The Dark Knight Rises, just because he made those films doesn't mean there's something bigger and better to be reached for. So I kind of like take that in my own everyday life too. And then Julia talks about filling the form. Filling the form means taking the next small step instead of skipping ahead to a large one. To be very specific, in order to sell a screenplay, you must first write one. Then she gives some advice like, you know, commit to like 3 pages a day. And then within like 40 days, you get a 120-page script, which is considered a full script. And then you're like, okay, you can go from there. So it's like kind of breaking down the steps to get to your goal is what's most important. And I think like for me at least, I'm always like, oh, I have to like make X amount of pages or I have to publish X amount of words to make this like good. But then I forget that you need to take smaller steps in order to build up to that bigger goal. So if you can just take one action every single day to get closer to where you want to go, you're going to get there eventually. Again, everybody's on their own timeline. And you just have to keep going and keep working on it. And you have to celebrate the small creative changes that you make in the moment before really celebrating the big one, too. Filling the form means that we must work with what we have rather than languish in complaints over what we have not. Take one small daily action instead of indulging in the big questions. Love that. We have found that when we fill the form, we do not often need to make large changes. Large changes occur in tiny increments. Think of it as a space flight. By altering the launch trajectory very slightly, a great difference can be made over time. Low-key, that's from Hidden Figures. And I love that movie, bro. I think I watched it. Oh, that was my pen. Um, Somewhat recently. Sort of. I'm just gonna write that. Hidden Figures. Love that movie. Okay, and then we did an exercise of early patternings, or like thinking about connecting the dots of our earlier conditioning, like of our childhood, what we were led to believe, and then how that has been instilled in us into our older adult lives, or just like older lives in general. So that was really good. And then also affirmations. We were instructed to use these affirmations and write it in a place, or write it and like post it in a place where you can see it every day. So I have this sticking out on one of my monitors, and I chose 5 affirmations like was instructed. And I wrote, I am a talented person. I have a right to be an artist. I now share my creativity more openly. I now allow myself to heal. I now accept God's help unfolding my life. So I used those 5 affirmations. And there's more here that she listed, but it was still very cool. And then for the tasks, I really like the tasks this week. They were more writing based, which I find that I'm better at doing writing based tasks instead of action based tasks, which I'm going to challenge myself to do more of the action things as we go into the last quarter of the artist's way, which is wild to think about. One of the tasks was to write about your dream. So name your dream and then follow all these steps to name a concrete goal that signals to you to its accomplishment. And then this goal is your true north on your emotional compass. And then we did the steps that I talked about earlier, kind of like mapping out how you get to this goal. So you answer the prompt, where would you like to be in 5 years in relation to your dream and true north? In the world we inhabit now, what action can you take this year to move you closer? What action can you take this month, next week, this day, right now? And then the last part is list your dream, list true north, and select a role model. Then make an action plan, breaking it down from 5 years to 3 years to 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, now. And then choose an action. Reading this book is an action. So then there were other, prompts that I did. I didn't do the last part, which was like plan an ideal day, but I think I've kind of thought about it in my head. I just didn't write it out. And then, yeah, that was really cool. I'll like quickly gloss over what I wrote down because I kind of wrote a lot. But since I've been very much into movies lately, and like I've always wanted to write a screenplay, and I've learned a little bit how to do it. I just like haven't done it for fun for myself. It would be great if I could find it. Oh, okay. Goal search dreams. So I will read this out and bare my soul to whoever is watching. In a perfect world, I would secretly love to be a screenwriter. My concrete goal that I wrote down, my screenplay will be adapted into a world-famous film. So then my emotional compass, what is my true north in this goal, is recognition, which I think would be super cool. I don't know, I'm definitely not someone who likes to be like center stage on stage, but I like the recognition kind of in like a low-key way. So I think screenwriter is like a way into that. So then in a perfect world, I would like to be living in LA in 5 years and pitching my screenplay to all the film studios. Loki, when I said that out loud, I kind of got nervous because I was like, I have never really pictured myself in LA. I've honestly pictured myself in New York and Chicago, but LA kind of seems like a far off, distant land, which it sort of is. But Loki, I'm like, who knows what could happen? So this is why I wrote it down. An action I can take this year to move me closer is to write the first draft of my said screenplay, which I already have that goal and I'm working towards. My goal, or next part of this goal setting, My dream to be a famous screenwriter. My true north. Oh, okay. My thing like paused, so I don't know what I just said or what was not said. Okay. An action I can take this year to move me closer is to write the first draft of my said screenplay. Really hope that recorded. And then my dream is to be a famous screenwriter. My true north is recognition. And then a role model that I wish I put a woman screenwriter, but I don't know too many off the top of my head. So I wrote Robert Eggers because I love his films and scripts. Then this is my action plan that I wrote out. 5 years. In 5 years, I have moved to LA. In 3 years, I've finished writing my screenplay. In 2 years, I've edited and showed colleagues of the first iteration of these script drafts. In 1 year, I'll have finished my first draft. In 1 month, I'll finish the first act. In 1 week, I'll write the outline. And right now, I'm reading The Artist's Way to kind of mentally prepare for that. So, yeah, team, I have been yapping for so long. So this has just been really interesting, like an introspective week so far. I'll do my check-in real quick. How many days this week did I do my morning pages? I've done it 5 days. I didn't do it on last Sunday and yesterday because I both went to movies and I was just like really excited to get there. So, and I watched Thunderbolts, bro. That has like actually inspired me to get back to my writing. And Lewis Pullman, I'm free whenever you are. That's all I gotta say. Um, Very good experience. I love doing my morning pages as usual. I try to do it as consistent as I can. I'm gonna shoot for a 7 out of 7 though, and I'm starting out great today, this week. Did I do my artist date? I did. Kind of copied last week well, I went to movies basically, like by myself twice this week. And I'm so glad I did it for Thunderbolts because that is an amazing movie. Please watch it if you can. Um, it's interesting. This question goes into how have you been allowing workaholism or other commitments to sabotage this practice? Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm just like not in the mood, but I'm like, I have to push myself to do something, whatever I can do. And then last two questions are the same. Did you experience any synchronicity? And then were there any issues this week? So, synchronicity, yes. I'm literally going to talk about this, even though I've been talking for so long. But, anyways, so I saw these really beautiful flowers last Saturday, which was before this last week, technically. But I saw these really beautiful flowers. They were like these hanging cute little flowers, and they kind of look like bells, but I didn't know what they were called. And, I didn't think much about it because last Saturday I was in Chicago at the Art Institute, and then we were sitting like in this garden, and then I saw these flowers, and then this like random person went up to the flowers and they were like, oh, I don't know what this flower is. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what it is either. But I like kept that thought in my head and I was like, okay, I'll look into it later. And I didn't. But then I was watching the Broski Report by Brittany Broski. I love her. She's like one of my favorite influencers. And I listen to her podcast every week. And then she started talking about lily of the valley flowers, and they're these flowers. And she was talking about, I think, how she loves them and they were her favorite growing up. And then I looked up a picture and I was like, oh, these are the flowers that I saw last weekend. So I just thought it was funny and I felt very connected at that moment. It's giving parasocial, but whatever. We're vibing. So yeah, I really want to get a tattoo of those flowers now. So thinking about it, I have saved some sketches in my Pinterest. And then lastly, I need to make like a whole thing about this. I'm about to like post something more on TikTok about Thunderbolts because it's in my head. I can't get it out of my head. But this week, especially leading up to Thunderbolts, I've very much felt seen in the quiet, like background characters who have a lot going on in their brains. and who have, they may present themselves as quiet, but they really have a lot going on and they're very smart and intellectual. They just fade into the background a little bit, but those are the type of characters that intrigue me, and I think I feel very seen by them because I would say I'm pretty in the middle in terms of like social butterfly and wallflower. I'm like somewhere in the middle. But oftentimes, if I'm like by myself or not in a group of like people that I know really well, I kind of fade into the background or I'm just like very quiet because I am pretty introverted and a little bit more on the shyer side. So I just feel very seen by those type of characters that I see in media or in books, stuff like that. So I say this because oh my god, literally Lewis Pullman, he plays the most interesting characters and I want to watch more of his work because I think he's such a phenomenal character. He's also really handsome, but that's just an additive. But he is really talented, I think. And he plays Bob twice in two different movies, two different franchises. He plays Bob, the fighter pilot in Top Gun Maverick, and I've been in that bag since 2022. And now everyone is starting to realize how great of an actor he is in Thunderbolts, coming out like 3 years later. And he also plays a character named Bob, but his character is so interesting because he's like this fractured, fragile man who accidentally becomes one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel universe in the comics and now introduced into the theater world or the movie like franchise world. And I'm just blown away by the lore behind this character and seeing it portrayed on the big screen by a really talented actor. And I'm like, bro, I can't stop thinking about it. I'm like consumed by it right now. And it's like, I feel the hyperfixation forming. It's like, ah, like that wolf meme that I share with my friends. Okay, that's that. So that's the synchronicity I felt. And honestly, I think I just need to get to work. There's so many things happening. And I'm just very invigorated and excited during this last leg of the artist's way. And, still in my bag for content, but I really just want to write now and get into more things that I've been planning for a while. So, yeah, that was the artist's way week 8. Thank you for listening. If you've listened this far, comment a flower emoji because I've been thinking about lily of the valley flowers, which I think currently is one of my favorite flowers now. So, yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll check in again next week. Bye. Ooh.